Hey guys, can you hear me okay? If not, turn your volume up just a bit and join me for a few minutes to learn about the basics of composting. My name is Brooke Nichols with Nature's Premier Diaper Service, and I am here to go over a few different composting techniques to fit your needs. This is the perfect time of year to start a really solid composting program, so if you know anybody that can benefit from this information, please do give this video a share. It really does help get the message to more people that can use this information. Now let's begin. Tonight's video is a two-part series about composting. If you would like to learn more about the basics of composting, please do check out our video that we made last week in the Facebook feed below. Traditional composting is not a one-size-fits-all program. This is why over the years different techniques have come to light for more individuals and families to give the opportunity to start a composting program regardless of where they live and where they are located. There are 3 different composting programs that we are going to go over quickly tonight. Please do know that there are many different composting methods. This is just the most popular and the most effective in our opinion, so we want to touch on them real quick. The first one is vermicomposting, which is actually worm composting, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The second one is the 3-bin composting method that I actually use for my home. And the third one is pit composting. So vermicomposting uses worms to do the work. You just need to bury your food waste under moistened bedding material. The bedding is made from shredded paper, like dead leaves, straw, newspaper. You can even, like sawdust, you can use for bedding for these little guys. And we recommend for the vermicomposting, which is worm composting, to get like a solid container. You can get them off of Amazon. It's a metal bin that has a lid on top with a little carbon filter. And what you would do is you would actually add bedding on the bottom, and you would use these worms, not the same worms that you get from your backyard or outside. You would actually buy these worms and you would put them on top of this bedding. It's an excellent option for those living in, apartments and other small spaces. Depending on what region of the country you live in, it can be done outdoors, but we highly recommend doing worm composting indoors because it is very effective, and these worms really hate sunlight, so it's a perfect method for you to use on your counter or even in a cabinet away from the light and, the daily clutter of the kitchen and whatnot. It can also be done in the basement. It can be done in an attached garage if you really don't want to see the little bin. It literally looks like a metal bin. It doesn't look like anything else. You can't see the worms or anything like that, and they're tiny, tiny little guys, so you don't have to worry about these big earthworms moving around in your kitchen. Worms are actually amazing little workers. They're called red wigglers. That's what we will recommend using for this type of composting method. They are best suited for home composting. They are comfortable living in an opaque box filled with different bedding like we discussed, and with your kitchen scraps. So when you have your bin and you have the bedding and you have the worms on the bottom, what you would do is add a little bit of kitchen scraps. So let's say you're cutting up lettuce, or you're cutting up onions, or you're cutting up carrots and broccoli and the like. You would literally toss this inside of your bin and the worms would get to work. And within a couple weeks, you just keep feeding them and they'll keep eating. And within a couple weeks, you'll start to notice that there's going to be a rich black soil, depending on what kind of worms you use, depending on what you're putting in there. And you're going to be able to start taking that out. Now, real compost from worms isn't usable yet. It's called castings, and that's not usable for like 3 to 6 months. But you would literally, when you need to add more, like let's say it's like filling up, you would just put the worms to the side, you could take that stuff out, and then you would just put more bedding and feed inside of it. So it's literally a really good system. It's fantastic for waste and the like. It's really good for, instead of like tossing your kitchen scraps, you would literally just feed these worms, and what they do is they eat the food matter and they pass it. So it has like this really nutrient-rich manure that comes out, and that's what would be used for your composting. So it's a fantastic, fantastic method for, apartments, for small houses, for those that don't have big backyards. You can certainly get fantastic, high-quality, nutrient-rich compost from these little worms, and, be able to recycle your kitchen scraps at the same time. Fantastic method. We highly, highly, highly recommend. Now, there's a lot more on vermicomposting, and we definitely recommend you guys check that out to find different bins that might work for you, different types of worms, even though red wigglers are probably the best to use, and also different methods of using the worm composting. So another type of composting that we're going to go over tonight, which is a different technique, is called the 3-bin composting method. It's called open composting for short. They're an excellent way to do hot and cold composting. This actually is probably one of the best methods to compost. This is what I use, and how it works is really works if you have a big backyard or even a small backyard, but you need some kind of open space outside. So what it is, it's 3 bins. Or you could do it in 2 bins, but we do 3. You have where 1 bin that you can like make out of pallets. It's usually made with like wire fencing, wood, things like that. You can make this, we actually made ours with pallets. But the first bin on the far left is going to be like all of the, like your food and dirt and leaves and everything like that in there. And then what you do, you let that sit for a little bit, and then you transfer into the middle one, which is where you would start adding different elements to start, breaking the compost down. You would use a pitchfork, you would mix it all up, and then the third one is where the compost would actually go. So you would be really surprised. I've been aggressively composting, and I mean by aggressively every single thing that's natural in my kitchen, whether it be banana peels, any kind of vegetation, even plants that die, that aren't coming back. I compost everything. I compost literally everything, and we toss it all outside. And the compost is so nutrient dense, but it's tight and small and compact. So if you think 2 years of food scraps is going to be huge, and going to have this huge mess, it's actually not like that at all, because it breaks down. And to get, let's say, like a 50-pound bag of compost would really take you like 2 years, maybe a little less depending on your method, but it does take a while to break that down. So the 3-bin system is fantastic. It allows for enough heat to generate the compost and to activate it. It also has the elements come on it. You have rain, you have snow, wind blowing everything into it, mixing all the elements in, and it does create a really fantastically rich compost. And we definitely recommend this compost method because it's the most efficient. You can do most with it, whereas with the worm composting, you can't really feed the worms more than half of a cup, every couple days maybe. It really depends. I haven't done worm composting myself, but it does work really well, and I have introduced worm composting to our 3-bin compost method. So it works really, really well. We have it all the way at the end of our yard on the corner, and it's not really an eyesore. It does look like there's some stuff going on over there, but it's not really an eyesore. All we ever put in it is fruit, vegetables. Like you can put like plant-based bags in there. You can put eggshells in there. We don't consume eggs ourselves, but we have friends that we get eggshells from, and we use that, and we toss it in, and you can even put coffee grinds in there, and there's a lot of things that you can do with an open bin composting system. Now, the third one we wanted to go over, and again, if you know anybody that can use this information, that can, wants just like a quick intro to composting, please again do share this video. It really does help spread the message to those who can use this information, especially being that it is the end of March, and this is a perfect time to get started on an awesome composting program that you really would reap many, many benefits from. So the third technique we're going to go over is called pit composting. Now, pit composting is one of the most traditional, oldest ways to compost scraps. My grandmother actually did pit composting, and what that is, it's literally how it sounds. You would dig a hole, and you would dump your scraps in there. You would put soil back on top, pat it down, and then you're good to go and you forget about it. So this really works if you are, let's say you have an area of your yard that you want to grow food on. You would do pit composting in that area. So you would dig a trench, or not really a trench, you dig like a deep hole, and you want to make sure it's deep, and we'll get to that in a second for the reasons why. But you would dig a hole, and you would literally just dump all of your scraps in, you would load the hole up, depending on how deep it is, and then you would cover it with soil, and then you would literally forget about it. And within about 6 months to a year, we highly recommend waiting a year because that's how you know everything will be broken down. You would just plant on top of it and you'll get really nutrient dense soil. Now, the reason why we say you want to dig a little deeper, because if let's say you have weeds or you're doing some kind of like collection in your backyard of, different weeds and flowers and dandelions and things like that, you can dump them in the compost pile and they will contribute to what's going on there already. But if it's too shallow, then it's going to actually resprout. So you want to make sure these guys don't resprout and ruin your compost and ruin your pit composting area. Now, pit composting areas, they are extremely enriched in nutrients. They don't see the sun, but nature does its work and it breaks it down already. So it's pulling all these elements, pulling all these compounds to make a really fantastic soil and fertile ground for your garden. So we definitely recommend pit composting if you really don't want to deal with pitchforks and, making your own bins outside or dealing with worms. We definitely recommend you just do that. Have a sectioned off, like a penned off area for your garden, and then use that and you will reap many benefits for that. You can even dig a compost pile and add more elements to it. If you want to continue to enrich the soil, you can do that every year or so, or like every year and a half, 2 years or so. So it's a really cool way to compost. It's super easy to compost, and you're still not adding those elements to the, landfills like we talked about last week. When you dump vegetation and the like into garbage bags, it actually creates like a methane gas, and that emits into the sky, and it does contribute to global warming and greenhouse gases. So it's pretty gnarly. We want to make sure we get into composting. It's super easy, just like recycling. It's literally like the fourth element: reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost. Now, if anyone has any questions, please do feel free to ask below. I am obsessed with this topic, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. If anybody has any questions at all to get started, just let me know. And you can also check out our video last week. We had discussed the basics of composting, what to put in a compost pile, what you can and what you can't put in, what composting is, and the different basics like that. So again, just to retouch, we have 3 different techniques that we're going to discuss, that we did discuss tonight. That was vermicomposting, aka worm composting, 3-bin composting method, which is also known as hot and cold composting, and the pit composting method. So if you want to learn again about this, please do rewatch this video and share with your friends so we can spread the message to more people that can use this. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight, and we will be back again next Sunday night at 8:30 p.m. You guys have a great night and have a great week. Take care.